Okay. Hey everybody, it's the 5th of July. I'm at the most coveted Hyde State Park, or is it National?
Yeah, this is Black Canyon National Forest Campground.
And this is my friend, new compadre Steve Wilson, and as fate would have it, he's done sustainable living before it was cool or in fashion, and I hate people who use quotes. Okay, Steve, it's all yours.
It's all mine.
Tell me, tell us about your what you do for a living, about your little cabin, and how you got started.
Okay. I started growing up on a farm, and from that, getting the nature experience.
Okay.
And from that, getting involved into nature.
Okay.
I don't know if you've read the comic strip Mark Trail.
No, never knew about Mark Trail.
Well,
so,
he's still
okay.
in some publications now. Anyway, he was like Mr. Woodsman, and
Okay.
so I would read him religiously.
Okay.
And so as I grew and mature, I had a natural inclination towards nature. And
Okay.
So I worked in various programs, working with adjudicated youth, living in the woods 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay, guys, adjudicated means they did bad things.
Right.
They were just a little misguided.
That means they were involved in the courts,
Right.
or at least with the courts.
Okay, cool.
And the longest trip I did with a group of kids was going down the Mississippi.
Okay.
And we were out for 8 weeks.
Okay.
Spent 6 weeks out actually on the river itself.
Wow. In
And
canoes or a boat or?
we actually created our own, in our minds, a Huck Finn raft, which is really a pontoon boat that we built ourselves.
Cool. Very
and,
cool.
Floated down the river from north of St. Louis all the way down to New Orleans.
Wow.
Um,
Anybody like get knocked overboard or anything? Any drama?
No, just a few run-ins with barges, things like that could have killed us all, but
otherwise
we
safe
missed
sailing.
that. Yeah, we had a motor which would conk out on a regular basis, so navigating the Mississippi River with a huge barge coming at you can be a little.
That could be a little
hair-raising.
dramatic. Yeah.
In fact, one fisherman rescued us once with a little John boat. Tied a rope to our big 14 by 28 foot raft. And towed us a little to safety, at least out of the barge traffic.
So you guys would like float down the river and then like dock or just like pull over and camp?
Yeah, we would pull
or?
over and camp, and we had a wood stove made out of an old barrel.
Okay.
On board, and so we were able to cook all of our meals on board, making biscuits in the morning, coffee, and
Cool.
cooking breakfast.
So how did the kids take to this? Were they like reluctant at first, or?
Yeah, they were pretty much excited, but you know, when you put 10 boys that are 15, 16 together with 3 adults and being on board in a short space all day long, you can have a few problems that pop
I would
up.
imagine, some fights, people get pushed over.
We would get close to fights, but generally we would stop before we got to fights.
Okay, well, hey, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that sort of set my tone for. That was when I got out of college doing that for 5 years in Florida.
So they saw you as a fresh bait. We'll get the young guy to take these kids down the river, basically.
Pretty much so. And then, as time progressed, I decided I needed to get out of that and got more involved in similar programs, but not as long term.
Okay.
Where we would maybe go out for a week at a time.
Yeah, 8 weeks. That's like monolithic. I mean, that's huge. That's epic.
Yes,
So.
it was, and it was quite the interesting. And we read The Adventures of Huck Finn as we were floating down the river,
Okay.
which was one of the first books I read
Oh, really?
when much younger, or as far as one of the first big books.
Big books. Okay.
Because if you look at Huck Finn, it was that of a book for an 8th grader,
Right,
or 7th
okay,
grader.
okay.
So reading that.
Cool. And then you went to college for what is now known as therapeutic wilderness, right?
Right, therapeutic recreation,
Okay.
which at that time did not have. And so my plan was originally to go into YMCA work.
Okay.
And but then I got hooked up in wilderness programs, and
Okay.
the first being that one that I was telling you about, the Eckerd Foundation,
Okay.
where I worked for 5 years for there. And then after that, I needed a break because that was really stressful, and then worked for the ski industry for about 3 years.
How was
and
that?
That was fun.
That was
was
fun?
just pure fun.
Pure fun. Make a lot of tips. People love you. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I started off. I was the old age of 28,
Okay.
working in the ski industry, where most of the workers were like college students.
Okay.
And so I worked for Beach Mountain in North Carolina,
Okay.
and as just signed up to be a regular worker, and then I became an assistant manager right away because of my old age of
Yes,
28.
you seasoned veteran. You.
Yes, responsible, and worked there for a few weeks, and then they fired the manager, and so I became manager,
Okay.
and at that time I could not even ski. So
Excellent,
manager
how
of ski
appropriate.
rentals, but I could fit people in skis. So that was my playing stage, and
Okay.
I did that for about 3 years, working at some summer camps,
Cool.
and then worked at Brevard College.
Okay.
Taught wilderness education there, outdoor education there, teaching rock climbing and various other activities.
So you can actually take rock climbing in college.
Yes.
Wow.
It was a PE sport.
Oh, it was a PE
PE
sport.
activity. Yeah.
PE activity where you could get killed.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
For 1 credit. You got 1 credit
One
hour
credit for
for
risking your
going
life.
out climbing for 3 hours. a
Love
week.
America. It's a great country.
It is a great.
All right, well, let's fast forward to, since, I'm in solar energy, SorelEnergy.com, little shameless plug. Anyway, so I wanted you to tell the people about your off-the-grid experience and how you got started, and just kind of take us through when you first got started, what you started with, what you had, what you didn't have, and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Okay?
There was a point where I was renting a house, or rooming with someone, and then they ended up going through divorce, since I needed a place to live. So I started looking through the newspaper and found a piece of property that was about 3 acres, dirt cheap, unrestricted, which means unrestricted means you could build anything on it. You didn't have to have any certain code other
Right.
than the regular county codes. And so I discovered this and figured out I could afford financing $9,500 for 3 years.
For 3 acres,
For
right?
3 acres.
For 3 acres. Hallelujah.
And it was 3 acres that was surrounded on 3 sides by national forest. It was up on top of the side of a mountain. Part of my property had a little bit of a ridge top to it.
Oh, cool.
And so there was a flat space to build something. So I started building a small little cabin, 12 by 14, with a sleeping loft, with my desire or plan to build the small cabin, and then after a couple years save my money and then build a real house.
Okay, cool.
And so
So was it raised off the ground, or was it pier and beam? What kind of house? Architect. I want to know what kind of.
okay, it was used locust post for the 4 corners
Okay.
of the structure, with a post in the middle. So it was built on beams.
Okay, so raised off the ground.
raised
you got
off
your
the ground about
beams
2
and your
feet.
piers, which would be your
Yeah,
post.
yeah.
Okay.
And my father had a farm, and he had some lumber milled to build. He was going to build a barn.
Right, that he didn't want to part with, by
Right.
the way. Daddy was going to build another house. At how old was
Yeah,
it?
and he was in his 70s at that time.
Oh, he's still young.
And he was already starting to have a little bit of Alzheimer's.
Okay.
Which we didn't know exactly at that time.
Well, it
what
takes a while to
was.
manifest.
But
right?
we definitely, he was still had this. He was going to build a barn. But anyway, he allowed me to part with some of the lumber, some.
Good old dad.
And as time went on, he let me to have more.
Okay.
But he had stacks and stacks of lumber. He almost had to. He was the type that would build a barn so he could store his lumber that he was going to build a barn with.
Excellent, excellent.
So all this lumber I brought up to the mountains. This is like a 2-hour trip from Charlotte area up to the mountains that I
Okay.
used a U-Haul to bring up the lumber to build my.
Or anything?
Yeah, I had so a regular stud type built house.
Okay.
And actually the way I got my inspiration was a friend of mine built a small cabin like that near his regular